Ian, it was the FTC earlier this week. Now we move to Apple suing. Remind us what this is all about.
Right. Well, the fundamentals of Qualcomm's business, where it gets all of its profit dollars, is from patents that underpin all modern phone systems. If you make a phone, you pay Qualcomm. That's what this is all about. That's the fundamentals. Apple doesn't like that and is trying to do something about that.
And it feels that they pay too much because the percentage is based on the cost of the phone, perhaps not the cost of the part.
Yeah.
Alex, what does Apple want to achieve by suing Qualcomm?
I mean, Apple's firstly saying that Qualcomm has withheld money from it, which it agreed to pay. Well, yeah, it's big numbers that it agreed to pay Apple, but in return for Apple not talking to essentially law enforcement and regulatory authorities. That's part of the agreement that Qualcomm claims Apple signed. Apple said, look, if you're subpoenaed by regulatory authorities, you have to speak to them. We were only doing what is right and just. And so that's what's at heart here. But really what Apple wants is that in their broader business case and business model, what Apple always tries to do is have more than one supplier for any given component. That allows them to play the suppliers off against each other, get lower prices, and until last year, until the iPhone 7, Qualcomm dominated that part of the phone.
This is all about getting more margin for each iPhone that they sell. But Ian, who wins out of this? Because now it seems that Apple doesn't have to just go to Qualcomm.
Right. I mean, all of these licensing fees have given Qualcomm a huge lead, as Alex just alluded to. That kind of is getting whittled away. Intel has now been used by Apple, so there's a potential for a market share shift there. But also the winners and losers. I mean, you look at Qualcomm's gross margin, it's nearly 60%. Look at Apple's, sub 40. What Apple wants is fundamentally is a transference there.
And I think it's at this moment when iPhone sales have declined, the first decline since the phone came to market 10 years ago, that's placed extra emphasis on quite how much money they can squeeze out of every single handset. That's why Tim Cook pushes services as another way of getting recurring revenue from phones. But if then they can then squeeze the profit margins higher for the hardware, that's of course very important.
This is something clearly irritating Apple, particularly as they see their profits under pressure. But is this something that irritates the rest of the phone makers? Is this something we might see others come out and sue?
Well, again, back to the conjecture of who's behind all of this. It's no secret that South Korea, which is the most strident to come out against Qualcomm so far, is home to Samsung Electronics, the world's largest mobile phone maker, LG, which is Qualcomm's third largest customer. It's not difficult to imagine that handset makers throughout the world would like a better arrangement with Qualcomm.
I mean, we're going to be waiting to see what Qualcomm responds. They haven't as yet. But speaking to Apple at the moment, do they feel they're caught between a rock and a hard place and they had to come out? I mean, how much are they also cause for concern about the $1 billion that was being withheld? Is that also what's at stake?
Obviously $1 billion for Apple, it is a lot of money, but they make a lot more. I think possibly the element is more likely to be that Qualcomm's down right now, strike them while they're down and try and claim advantage while you can. This is Tim Cook's Apple, who's built this business on an extremely good and efficient supply chain. And so trying to, as we said, squeeze everything out of those suppliers is key to the way that he runs that company.
Yeah,
what next?
We just talked to people, to get their take on this, and they're like, look, this is a negotiation.
Yeah.
Qualcomm tends to win. Legal cases take years and years, so there's no immediate benefit to anybody here unless they can settle for lower license rates.